Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dave Brownigal. I'm with the Spokane Tribe, and this is Tribal Voices. And I'd like to introduce our guest this evening, and we're going to be talking about the revitalization of our language. And to my far right, we have J.R. Bluff. He's a Kalispel tribal member and one of our guests tonight. And thank you, J.R., for being here. Dave. And Pascal, Pauline, Pascal Flett, I told you I was going to do this, from our Spokane Tribe, and she's our language specialist, and she's keeping very much our language alive, and I'd like to thank you again, Pauline, for being here, and for all the work you've done. And we also have from Eastern Washington University, Dr. Robert L. Whitman, and he's one of our guests this evening. And
Rob.
Rob, okay, we'll call him Rob, Dr. Rob. Well, welcome, Rob. And to my right, the co-host, Martina Whelshula. She's from the Colville tribe. I'll let you introduce that. So, what we're going to be doing this evening is we're going to continue what we were talking about the last month regarding revitalization of the language and also the certification. But tonight, Pauline, we'd like to have you start and what you were beginning to talk about last month about the importance, the power, the meaning, the history, the living language that all the tribes still have, and they're trying to maintain it and keep it alive. So, Pauline, if you would.
Thank you, Dave. And I'm proud to be here tonight, and I'm always proud to talk of our language. To me, our language is like music. It's got a rhythm of its own, and after you've been speaking it a while, well, you can even tell when you've said the wrong word in the wrong place. It's that because it's out of sync, it's out of rhythm, and each little word has its own history, and a lot of our words are from way far back, and we still hold on to them to this day. And then the beauty part of it now is that we're using our old words and making new words for computers, for television, for what we have today, our microwave ovens, our helicopters or motorcycles and everything. And we're not creating new words. We're using same old words, but different suffixes and prefixes. And I just can't describe how interesting it is to me to be teaching our teachers. That's what I do now, is I teach our teachers to teach the language to the grade school from kindergarten or preschool, Head Start, excuse me, Head Start to high school. And each teacher has a own method of teaching, but we have the same concept or the same program, but they teach it different. And we're making books, creating books, and the last one even has a teacher's manual.
Oh.
Yeah. And it, for each word then that appears in this book, then in the teacher's manual, it'll tell what that word is, whether it's, or it'll tell what the, well, for instance, for the microwave, wave is like this, you know, the tak, we say tak in our language, and small is gukuyuma, so we say, we put the words together and we say kuima taka. You know, if an older person would hear me saying, they would say, well, it's a little small wave. But actually, that's our new word for microwave. So, and our word for the one we're making now is for computer. And what does a computer do? It acts like a brain. So that's what we're calling it. Is that it acts just like a brain, you know. Pretends to be a brain. Stamkin is the brain, so stamkina is acting like a brain. So that's what we've used for the computer, and so on and on. Now that we have a group that comes in once a week, and we talk these words over, and we make these words, and we do a lot of laughing. We have a lot of fun at it, and but the beauty part of it is that we know that this is going to reach so many other students, especially, and that if we make it interesting enough, make it fun enough, well, they're going to learn. And the rewards we get now is maybe some of the little ones that come up to you and say hello to you in Indian and shake your hand. They learn that real fast, shake hands. In the beginning, we shook hands because I'm proving to him I don't have anything in my hand, no weapon or anything, so I come to him in friendship. So that's what these are the things that are going to go into the teacher's manual, so that the teacher tells the students what each custom that we have has a history behind it, and it's mind-boggling. To me, it is really mind-boggling, and I get such a thrill out of teaching it and thinking these things through, and a lot of it is just plain old common sense, but it makes a lot of sense after I get it written down, and then I have to write it down. Even if I try to put it on the computer, I first write it down. So now we're getting some new people in that are volunteers, and they're doing all of the typing and on the computers and putting it on cassettes or on discs, and I think we're going to come up with some good ones yet. I want some of the kids to illustrate some of the stories, because I've told stories before, and I'd have give them some paper, you draw what you think I'm saying, and they come up with some fabulous things. So we want to create a few books that way, and have them sign their name, grade their in, the year, and then it'll be part of them. That way, they can share. That'll involve the parents, because the parents, they'll have to show the parents, what they've done, and grandparents, and so it'll involve everyone. That was my dad. My dad used to do that. We'd have a picnic. He'd say, let's meet down at the lake for fishing this afternoon after church on Sunday. Bring your lunch. Okay. As soon as he sees somebody, come on over, join us. Come on over and join us. I mean, we can go from a dozen to 60 people at this time, 80 people. And it's funny part of it is always have enough food for everybody. So this is what I think that is happening with our language. Involve everybody. Everybody will get a taste of it. Everybody will savor the taste of it, and everybody's going to share it with everyone else. They're going to say, boy, we're having fun over here. Come with us, and this is my dream.
Are you doing the manuals for your new language teachers? Is that who it's for? We did in Inchalim with the elementary. We did the same thing that you're talking about, where I asked them to take the word, and I talked to them about the meaning of Inchalium, and talked about Cha'am, and talked about all of the Inchalim is a small town that I'm from on the Colville Reservation, and so we talk about the word Inchalim, and we have 3 creeks that all at Old Inchalim, all 3 creeks converged, and they met at one point where they hit the river. So Cha comes from the word Cha'am, which is the word for like impact, and Lium is like the ringing, like a bell or something like that. So Inchalim describes, where the 3 creeks hit the river and the water rings. And I remember growing up and my grandma calling it the singing waters. And so I asked the kids, draw a picture of Inchalium. And it was cool, the pictures, they had all the creeks there, and then right where they hit the river, they had little music sounds, or they or some places would have like this big explosion of music and all these little symbols, but it how can they not take that into their heart, remember that, that that's their home, but the meaning of the name of that place, and the power that comes with that, and then feeling proud because we had Aha in town in Chalium, and so that they could have that and show it to everybody and bring it home, for their parents and stuff. It is powerful.
Exactly, exactly.
And kids love it. They just get so into it. They just, and I think that's what we were hoping, with this particular show, is to get into why we love the language so much, and why do we even want to save the language. I think that, growing up, I always heard, that we need to save our language, we need to save our culture. I knew in my head that that's what we need to do, but I didn't know in my heart why. And so after working in the language and working with the elders and working, within the culture, then it was very clear to me, why we needed to do that. And I'm thinking that there's a lot of people that don't know why, that they know that we have some obligation or loyalty to our culture and our language, but they don't have a knowing in their heart why it's important to save it. And that's, just describing what you've described, and going into, let's learn about and get to know the language a little bit more and what it describes about an old world view, that doesn't mean that it's in the past. It means that we can use that now to guide us in how to be a human being, in this world, like Coyote taught us, that the language serves as that guide. And so I just want to invite JR into the conversation and just maybe talk a little bit about what you do and your experience with the language, or why you are working in the field that you're working in right now.
Okay, yeah. I work for the Kalispel tribe in our cultural department, and our cultural department has mainly existed for the last probably 3 or 4 years, just on just a one-person operation. And just recently, the council made finally got enough behind them so they could start this cultural program, start with the language. The language is probably the biggest push that we're doing, although a part of our culture department is also going to encompass a lot of what Pauline's talking about, our ways, the way we visit, all of our traditional areas up above the town or on our reservation, which goes into north of us into Canada and over into all the way up to Plains, Montana. So that's a lot of our Aboriginal ground, which is a big part of what we're trying to do also. But as for language, we're just beginning. We've got a lot of good partnerships with the Spokanes, the Flatheads, the Coeur d'Alenes, where we're getting a lot of our steps are getting identified. And what we have our language classes. We've been trying to develop curriculum, but right off the bat, for our Kalispel tribe is pretty small. We are about 312 maybe now. Of that, probably 7 to 10 speak the language. We all speak Salish. We're Kalispels. We speak a little different dialect, but but they're still there. And a part of our department or our program is to maybe help preserve it. I mean, so that we can work with it in the future. I mean, it's right now with technology, you can pretty much record anything and preserve it in that realm. But when you get into language, it's just like anything. It seems easy and it gets complex real fast. You're talking about root words, traditional words, contemporary words, and then it just kind of gets you. It gets you rolled in, and you just start saying, "Oh man, we have to." There's just so much to be done, and there's so much that has been done already. And I think that's probably one of our biggest ties that this language and the big certification is going to help us. Is because the tribes, this is all important to us, and we've all known that, and we've all have our past histories that we've all had our own struggles, and we know this is a common fight or a common struggle to resolve. And so I took this job about a year ago, and when I was a kid, I kind of had my plan, and my plan was my final job working in culture with our tradition, starting dancing, singing, doing things that I knew if I stayed alive, something I wanted to do. I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do when I was young. I knew what I was going to do through education, and I knew I was going to come back home, and I knew I was going to work with the language. Because a lot of the language that I've learned, and I speak with my dad who speaks fluently, and my grandmother, who that's basically all she spoke, especially when she was telling on somebody when she came to the house. When she started speaking Indian, it was like, okay. All of a sudden you'll hear one of our names, and
you knew you were in trouble then.
My grandma, and it's like, and you knew when she was started speaking Indian to Dad just started shaking his head.
Oh no!
And you kind of knew, but all that stuck with me. The memories and the strengths that are out there, because there's a lot of people that are doing their own thing, and I believe most of our people, it's in their mind. It's there. It's just like anything. It's waiting, and I feel a big part of that with our tribe is being a part of that, preserving and communicating with our elders. I'm fortunate enough that I think most of them like me. I don't know. You never know sometimes, huh?
Until you hear your name in a conversation.
Yeah. So I feel pretty fortunate. I love my job. I love what I'm doing. A lot of the path is still yet to be determined, but I feel confident we're going to get there. We've got help all over. Between all of our different reservations. That when it comes to something like this, which is tradition, culture for our people, it's not really a Spokane or a Kalispell thing. It's us. And I think this is that. This is our common tie, which connects us together, which we were, before the reservations were established. So.
And I think that's what's so powerful about this whole First Peoples Language Committee, because it is a grassroots committee. It was just people like ourselves getting together and saying, let's, work together on this and do this. But what unites everybody is the love of the language, and I mean, it's like, it goes deep. It's not just like, oh, I love the language. It's like, it's like it's so in our soul, so deep in us that I think that we feel compelled in our lives to, dedicate our life to that kind of work. I know I certainly feel that way, and I could hear it in the voices of everybody that spoke, during the testimony, the hearing, and at the smokehouse, at the Skokomish, and I thought, gosh, how could we convey what that feeling is? That it really does feel like a life's passion or a life's work. That no matter what it is that I do in my life professionally, I always bring the language into it, because it's not just a language. I guess that I am always trying to say it's a world view. It's a way of being in the world. It's a way of experiencing it. Yeah. And it's very different, from, I mean, if you think about it, ours is the language of the heart, isn't it? Everything has to do with spu'us, or, ils, it has to do with your feelings or your heart, I mean, there's, in our, I was saying in the last show that our word for thought has nothing to do with the mind or the brain, that it's innocent, you know, which it really is a knowing that you have, a feeling, which
An understanding.
yeah, you know, and
And
so
accept
it's here. It's not up here. Thinking doesn't happen up here. It's in your body, and it's a knowing and a feeling that I'm wondering if it's kind of like a real, you know, something like intuition, where you just know and feel something in your heart. You can, you know, you're so aware and so sensitive, you know, to what's ever around you, that you have this knowing, you know, that you have.
I'd like to touch on that. You know, in some quote-unquote scientific studies, you know, I can't help but feel that, you know, genetically, you know, it's there, it's that life. And what you were talking about, you know, when we give the words and the meaning, it's not a thought meaning, it's a visual feeling meaning. And then going back to what JR was saying, because I think of my mother and my grandmother and my aunt, and I remember when I was small, the same thing. I went through the same experiences, listening to them speak and knowing when you did well and knowing when you were in trouble, and knowing when you better start go down and get that willow stick and all that good stuff. But the thing about it, I guess when I was listening to JR speak, is, I guess, connecting. Well, I shouldn't say connecting, because that means you got away from it, you did, but understanding that connection between the ancestors through the language. And it's not like the language is separated, the language is. You know, it's not something that we, you know, put over here and then we decide to pick it up. It's always there. And I think that's one of the reasons the revitalization is so powerful. It's a revitalization in such a sense that it's a term that we borrow from the other culture, but it's I guess an understanding that it's there, and there's a responsibility behind it, that it has to be done. And I think I shared in one of the programs where I had a friend call me from another reservation outside the state, and he called and he was very sad, and he said, I just want to let you know, he said, our last fluent speaker passed away. He said, our language is gone. And then I asked him, I said, did you attempt to learn the language? And he said, no. He said, I guess maybe that's why I'm so sad, is because I didn't take the time. And I think that's what it's all about, is taking the time, taking the understanding. And when all the tribes came together for the certification, I mean, that the power, the passion that everyone felt. And I'd like to ask Rob. I almost said Rob.
Dr. Rob.
Dr. Rob. Okay, I can remember that. Okay, Dr. Rob. Listening to what you've heard so far and your background, could you give us some insight?
I was thinking about the first speaker at the certification hearing, whose name I don't remember. He was an older man. He spoke before you.
Hank Gobin.
Yeah, Hank. And Hank said something that it really, really struck me in the heart. He said at one point, he said, I can't say the words to you in your language that reflect the way that I feel. I can say those words in my own language, but it's not the same in your language. And it made me reflect upon the notion that in my background, growing up in white Anglo culture, middle class city culture, I did learn other languages. I did grow up bilingual, but it was also the model that I grew up with, is that other languages give you another way to think. And I remember people saying to me always, it's another way to think, it's another way to think, and it's valuable to have different ways to think. And I think that is important, but it also really gives me a lot of insight into why preserving and revitalizing and letting native languages grow is so important, because you all have mentioned over and over again the connection to the heart, whereas we, I think, in white mainstream culture are often connecting it to thinking only, and that right there is a huge difference. And I think of my own students. You know, I work out at Eastern in the education department, and I teach people who are going to be teachers. Many of them are monolingual, some of them know another language, but most of them are not connected with the tribal peoples in the area. And many of them would like to be. And I think to myself, my goodness, you know, if they could see this process at work, or if they could somehow help support it, not only would it be of benefit to the kinds of programs that are going on with that JR is involved with, or Pauline, but it would also teach them. So everybody could be taught, you know, and I think about that in my own, you know, just being in a conversation like this, you know, I get to be a learner, and I get a glimpse into that place where thinking and the heart are so interwoven in the language, the past of the language as it's presented here in the present, and as it moves on to the future, that's a really special gift. And I think that many people in our community who are not part of tribal peoples would gain a lot from being part of that process. Yet at the same time, I must say, seeing the certification process and seeing so many tribal peoples all dressed up, and I was sitting, you know, there were maybe 4 of us white people in the room, and I'm sitting there going, okay. It was great.
It was.
It was great to see and be able to sort of quietly sit and be a part of that power and that passion. You know, it was great.
But you were dressed up in your attire.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, and I want to tell them the story. We talked about this before the show, but you know, it was after we had our testimony. You know, we were feeling really pumped and really good. So a group of us went out to go eat Chinese food. You know, and but here we are. You know, Marcia and Susie and Patsy Martin, all of us. You know, they made an extra long booth. We weren't like really close together, but they lowered the partitions so that we could all seem like we had a long table. So we're all there and we're just chattering around, you know, and just all excited, and we all of a sudden, you know, it starts to settle down a little bit, and everybody's like noticing this white man who's sitting at our table, and they're like going, "Who is that?" I go, "I don't know." And somebody else goes, "Who is that?" And they go, "No, I don't know." And I go, "Who is that?" They go, "I don't know." So it's Rob's there. And at the end, I go, "Who are you? And what are you doing?"
That was like a big sigh of relief. Finally,
everybody was saying, "I thought he was with you."
I thought that's what they did. They just did.
Yeah.
Who's your friend? I don't know. I thought it was your friend. Yeah.
Well, it turns out that Donner's the one that knew Rob. So, but nobody asked Donner because he was busy down there visiting by himself.
But there's another thing I thought about, Dave, as you all were talking, and that is, you know, I work for a university, and for a university not to be explicitly supporting this kind of effort, to me, is baffling. We have to be. This is the good work. This is part of what a university is all about, supporting diversity of thought, diverse views. I mean, that's part of the explicit mission of almost every university in this country.
And that was the point that I was trying to make during the testimony, is that not only is it important to us in the survival of our culture and our own people, but it is important to the world.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be thinking like, oh, we're all that, but it is important. It's important that we share our worldview, because I think it has the power to transform our society. I think that our language and our worldview has the power to help make a cultural transformation and shift in our society. Because once you bring a language and once you bring a world in that's rooted in the earth, in the heart, how could that not change a culture? And that's what I'm saying. Not only that, but that our worldview is very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated and complex. We just have really entertaining and easy ways of saying it.
Well, one thing I'd like to bring up, and Dr. Rob, and all of you probably know the statistics, but you know, reading about how many languages disappear from the people.
That's a really
worldwide.
It's a really good
So
point.
part of that certification process too, and I think what's going to happen, I feel, is, and just talking about it like right now, is waking other people up to the fact that there is a language. It does live. It does exist. It's right here. and how are we going to continue on? And part of that is facilitation,
Yeah.
because we have to work with the other communities and the universities and the school districts and whatnot.
And I mean, just talking about like the world view, you know, just talking about, I was reading David Thompson. What was he? When he came into the territory a long time ago, was he one of like, he was hired by, was it Hudson Bay or somebody to come in and do, he came, was he a map maker or something? I can't remember what he was. Remember David Thompson, he came, met with the tribes along the Columbia.
Yeah, he was part of basically through the Hudson Bay, kind of one of the first explorers. I think his original start was with the Canadian side of it, not the Hudson
part
Bay
of the
side
Canadian
of it. And he's just one of the early explorers in this area.
Well, I was reading one of his journals, and he was talking about when he was up at Kettle Falls during the salmon, in the early salmon season, and the people up there were talking about not throwing bones into the water. And they said if you throw bones into the water, then the salmon will get insulted and they will go away and they won't come back. And I think they said specifically a certain number of days. Well, David Thompson and his men kind of blew it off as superstition, you know, kind of folklore superstition. And one of his men threw a horse bone, like a pelvic bone, into the water. And one of the Indian men that were there immediately dove in to get that horse bone out of there. And David Thompson said, he goes, I still do not understand it to this day, but he said that salmon never came back to that spot for 3 days. They did not come back. And so here they had blown it off, you know, to superstition, but it actually happened exactly the way that those men said it. You know, now we don't understand the scientific, you know, empirical evidence and description of what had just occurred, but we know for a fact that you throw bones in the water, then those salmon will not come back. I mean, that's thousands and thousands of years of observation. That is knowledge, you know, that just was blown off as superstition, folklore, you know, those kinds of things. And that, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about, that we do have an understanding about life. We say it very simply, but that doesn't mean it's simple-minded. And that's what, you know, that if we start talking about the language and we start talking about the world view and, you know, what the teachings are that come with that language, I think we begin to see how really sophisticated our knowledge is. And that was the point that I was trying to make to the State Board of Education.
Every time I hear talk about salmon, it makes me kind of sad, because it seems like when our salmon left us, well, our language is leaving too. We've been forced out of us, and then pretty soon, seems like our values switched for a while, that we were wanting to compete with the Suyapis, you know, and I know my dad wouldn't send me to a Chemawa. I wanted to go to Chemawa in the worst way, but no, he wouldn't let me go, because he'd gone to De Smet, you know, and so he knows what. He wouldn't let me go, but then he taught me everything else, you know. And like you're saying, a lot of these things that we were taught would be considered superstitious, but it isn't. We know in our hearts it isn't. We've seen it, and yet if we try to share it with people at large, well, they will say, the reaction would get,
And that's pretty basic on how the language was accepted too. I mean, we went through that process you're talking about, where, you know, the school systems and the government and the churches, and bam, 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 and then pretty soon it was like, you don't speak the language, and then it starts coming back. Yeah, I want to ask you something. You said you have like a little over 300 tribal members, and my children, my grandchildren are connected to your tribe. We're related. Do you see a growth with the young people picking up the language?
Yeah, I think with, you know, as part of our tribal vision, you know, this is something that all tribes want to keep alive on the reservation. you know, with this recertification, you know, I just think it's just going to step up a little faster. You know, things are going to get done. There's, you know, just the like you said before, you know, open the eyes. You know, right now, you know, we have, you know, our tribe, we really care about the kids, just like all the other tribes. I mean, we're always putting them out, and we usually always honor them, and we're grateful for them because we learn so much from them. And with this come along, we've got a lot of programs that it's basically us that need to provide it. That they're waiting for it. They want it, and like most of the battles has been you know, one-on-one. You know, one-on-one, one person's dream. And although the tribe as a whole believes it, it's just whether, you know, hitting the road, you know, and getting it done. And you know, we've got our own daycare, we've got our own after-school program, we have our own tutoring program. We're in with the school. The school's saying, hey, what do we need to do to get this done? And we're just like,
Wow.
you know, we need to get lined up too, you know. And we you know, we talk with a lot of people, a lot of other tribes, and each tribe is just a little bit farther along. Each tribe has their own maybe different problems, or they have more assets, or either way. And but for our tribe, you know, we integrated it in everything. We have our summer youth programs where we just keep the kids busy, keep them out of trouble, and we're with them on that. You know, we have our cultural days with them. We speak language. One day we'll take them up in dig some camas, you know, so just like the Spokanes and the Caldwells, you know, they're real active in them. And I think the biggest step we need to do, and you touched on a little bit, is not just opening the book and putting it down, you know, is jumping in 2 feet and getting in there and living it, you know. And because I talk to my dad all the time about it, and I can think back, because, you know, I lost excuse me, a lot of relations and stuff that all spoke the language, you know, and it's like, you know, and I think in my own mind, you know, that they weren't saying, okay, you guys sit down, I'm going to speak to you now, you know, you listen. It was just there. It was constantly, daily basis, and I know within time we're going to be there, you know, but it's like, okay, now let's do this, and let's make it, let's do it, and let's take it on from just black and white to we're going to live it. And I see nothing but positive. We've got, of our 300 some members, I think they say 120 of them are in high school or younger.
Wow.
So I mean, our school, I mean, we've, you know, they're there, and the school talks to us. You know, they want us in, and we're sitting there. Well, you know, we would like to also, but there's the professional side of it, and there's always that gray area. Well, how's this gonna work? Who's gonna do this? Who's gonna do that? Well, now, you know, I feel our tribe, we're gonna just say, okay, this is what we need to do. We're just gonna do it. We're not gonna get complex about this. Let's start doing it.
Yeah,
and
that's actually kind of my, you know, it was kind of question I had for you, because I remember when I heard about the certification process, and I heard about it from some of my peers in education. Of course, at the university level, people are involved in the certification of teachers. And you might well imagine that the message I was hearing from some of my colleagues was like, we're going to let them do the certifying? And I sort of said,
Who's them?
Who's them? Guess. Oh. And I said, my response was, well, how many tribal teachers have we trained in the last 20 years? How many have you trained? And the answer is always none. And so I'm saying, well, if we haven't trained any tribal teachers to go into tribal schools on the reservations, why don't we let somebody else give it a try? How they can't do any worse than we have. We've done a miserable job in American higher education. We don't train tribal teachers to go back to the reservations. We don't train tribal teachers, period. So why don't we just give it up? What's the big deal? But that wasn't. You might be, you know.
No.
But it made me think of what you said, JR. You know, in terms of you've got speakers and you've got a school, and the school wants them there, and the speakers want to be there. So what are you guys doing to negotiate or to make that happen? How's that happening?
Well, I think right now is the first step of the passage of the First Peoples.
Yeah.
And that's the first step. And I know I know we're going to work closely with Marcia and Pauline here up there in Spokane Reservation.
Good.
And, be right along with them. I know, and, even our relations over in the Flathead Res, they've been doing this. They've been doing this for, I don't know how many years, 10 years you said? Something like that, 10 plus years. So, I mean, it's there. But, we're real small. I mean, literally, you go to our res, you take a left and you can be on the res for 10 minutes. You take a right, you're off it in 1 minute.
7 minutes.
7.5 minutes.
I can run your res lengthwise.
Shouldn't even brought it up.
Beautiful country, though.
Yeah.
Beautiful country. Well, I just want to say one thing, too. And Pauline, I really appreciate what you have done and the people, some of them that have passed on, sad to say. But when I was sitting here and I was watching you when the people were speaking, I just couldn't help but think all that work and that effort, because I know you spend a lot of hours on your own time doing the transcription and how do you feel about this? I mean, it must just give you joy.
Give you burst all and I start out doing something and finally finish it. Oh gosh, But then I leave it lie for 2-3 days and read it again. Leave it lie for about 3 times, and then I'm happy with it. And I think that's then that get into print then, hopefully. It is. When I was teaching at Eastern, I never realized this, but Art said it takes her 6 hours to prepare for a 2.5-hour class. And I never realized that,
Wow.
But to just sit there and do what I think, and then sometimes I might not even do that lesson that day. Something else to come up. So I have several lessons, You always have to have more than 3 lessons when you go to teach something, because you never know which direction you're going to be led. Might be a question from him, and off and running on that one, But no matter, it's all, like we said, it all comes from here. And here, gut reaction, and the gut and the heart, I think, are interchangeable, and the gut tells you, ooh, slow down, go this other way, but the heart, if you follow the heart, it's always seems like it's always right, no matter what. How prepared you are, and how prepared you think you are, and you go to present something. Well, you get vibes from the people that are there, and before you know it, you're doing something else, equally as well, But it's you just have to be, I guess, open. Have to be open to what you feel when you walk into a crowd, into a classroom. And like with our teachers now, they're learning. They're almost stumbling over everything because they're learning so fast, and they're just wanting to learn more of the present tense, future tense, and all that stuff, and they got me hopping anyway. And I love it. I love it, because I know that they're learning, they're wanting to learn, and so.
And you're one of a kind. You're a one-of-a-kind lady. I don't know if you've ever, I don't think that you're so new you haven't had a chance to see Pauline in action. But my husband, Marty, took a class from Pauline, and he loved it. He goes, she is so cool. She tells stories. She has us cracking up. He knows art intimately. But the history that goes along with it, and I think that that's the gift.
Yeah.
Because, we can teach vocabulary, all we want, and we can teach phrases that people can memorize, but it isn't until you have the stories, until you have the history, and that you personalize it, you know, and that's what
Well,
Pauline does.
The first, when I visited and met Pauline back in early December, I think, or January actually, one of the things that she told me was the story of making up the word motorcycle.
Uh-oh. That's a mischievous giggle. Oh, look at
And I want her to tell that story because I just love it so much. And I have told it over and over again already.
Well, it came from one of our eldest men on the reservation, and they were, again, even then, you know, they were beginning to think, oh, we don't have words for this, we don't have words for that, I don't know what we can, and about that time motorcycle went by, and he sat and thought about it, and he named it. Oops. It's like something going by that fart. Pop, pop, pop,
That's
pop,
a visual.
You know, and have to tell this and too then since I've done that much. You know, our body parts, our body functions were never laughed at.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we never did laugh about anything. It's after we got so yuppie-ized, I guess you'd say, then, you know, we began using some of our body parts as slang or cuss words or whatever. But up until then, no. To say, oh, it's nothing. It's just describing a body function. You know, everybody does that. And so when that motorcycle went by, that's what it sounded like to him. Just a bunch of little air being dispelled here. And it's like we have to go back to our cars. But one of the first words that was in the New World now is that they seen these car tracks, and these guys said it looks like wrinkled feet prints. You know.
Oh.
So that we still call car wrinkled feet, evolution.
Oh.
Just because the tire tracks in the sand look like wrinkled feet prints.
Oh. See, now our word for television means moving nonsense.
For what?
For television.
Oh.
Moving nonsense. And then and what was the other one? Oh, the computer is lightning brain.
Oh, lightning brain.
So you get pretty creative with the words. But I think it says a lot about, you know, your people and how the value on certain things, you know. So like you could tell television just wasn't, you know, wasn't valued too highly.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, to see the building of the language, it reminds me, you know, because I read a lot of books for a living, that for a whole long time, American anthropologists and academics would go and look at the tribes, and they would say, oh, the tribes are in decline. The tribes are disappearing. Their language is dying. There's alcoholism. There's poverty. And all of this is disappearing. And that was all they could see. And here we are, you know, 30, 40, 50 years after all that writing was done. And, you know, here's the story you guys are telling, which is just the opposite. And it makes me think that these things must have also been going on back then. But the people who went to visit just didn't have the eyes to see.
Or that we were in hiding. Because it wasn't okay then.
Yeah.
It's like you go underground and then it becomes secret.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of what we go through, you know, and the reason I guess we can laugh so good, it's because it's an ongoing healing. And I was just thinking what you were saying. I was at this tournament today, and I saw a couple of our elders up there, so I went over and I started talking to them. And then we started talking and laughing about, being in the city. And I said, yeah, so I sat on the other side, and I sat down and I looked around, and I said, I realized there was no Indians, and I said, these people came up and says, sorry, the Indians are over there. And then they got security, and we were laughing because we know it didn't happen, right? but just the understanding that our parents and our grandparents went through that.
Yeah, sure.
But because they went through it, and I don't like saying survive because that means like you're hanging on. They lived through it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the culture, the beliefs, the values, the things that the other culture calls superstition, what we believe as real, as valuable, got us through. So we were sitting there with all these people, and we were laughing and having a good time with it. And I love it. I love it. And the language is there.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something. Can I?
Yes.
And Pauline, I want you to answer it too. We have two situations here in the certification, and I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I really believe it. Your reservation is right on the river, and then right across the river is the public school, right? And my understanding, talking with you today, it's a lot of good cooperation, coordination, all this. And then the Spokane reservation, the public school, is right on the reservation. So I guess from both perspectives, how do you see this working? What do you think needs to be done to make it happen?
Well, I think a lot of it is making it happen isn't something that is just something we can turn on. Through our history, and just the way we are, our people. We're a small reservation. We were never isolated. We always were. The community went across the river and to all of our friends. We all went to school with our non-Indian friends, and they were part of us. So I think a lot of our ways and the way we work with people and the way we deal with education, we know, it's either good or bad having a school off the reservation. It's what you make of it. You could easily fight it all the way and put up barriers, but what our tribal leadership has done, and even our people, I guess our reservation goes well within the boundary of where the government put us. I mean, this whole valley was important to us, and we just happen to be living in a small part of it. So it's not something that we're just going to turn on all of a sudden because we want this. This is something that we just have done. We get along with people. Education is always important to us, whether we're teaching our native language or not. I mean, it's always important to us, and this is something our council believes in, and all of us, our families, we believe in it. Education is what we need. It's good, and there's various forms of education. So, I mean, for us, there's not much change by us, because we've always had that working relation. We've had to. I mean, we're small reservation. We had very little resource. We were basically existing off grants every year. Staff of 1 or 2, and you have to work with people because they have to like you. People need to like you to do something for you. It seems like, I don't know. But for our school, we've got a good relationship. We help them. They help us. All of us have gone across there. Like I said, it's not like it's off the reservation. It's just part of our, just like anything. It's a way of our life. We always go there, and we come back home, which is only 1 mile. You could swim and be there in half a mile if you wanted to. So it's not like it's a big take us off and we forget where we're at. We've always, the council have always been involved. They're really looking at solving our problems. Whatever it is on an individual basis. And this is just a new opportunity. I know our council has always been behind education, always. And they've never doubted it, and they know every individual situation has its own, problems, but that relationship's always been there. And so, I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to it because I know the superintendent to the principal to all the teachers who've taught all of us. I mean, we've got, at the Cusick School District, most of those teachers are 20-some years there. They're not just rotated in every 5 years. A lot of them have been there. They started teaching when I was in there, which was a long time ago. So, you know, I feel good about it. I feel that they want to be, they know we're a part of them, excuse me, and we're a part of them, they're a part of us, and we work together. So I feel good with it. I think it's going to happen, but that's just kind of our special history that we have, which is different from every other tribe. So I feel good about it.
Okay. We have about 3 minutes to go, so Pauline, if you could give us a little...
To the end.
To the end.
Really?
Yep.
This is the end almost.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. This is the beginning. The beginning. Oh, it sounds like Greece.
I want to trade reservations with jail.
You're too tall. This is on tape. Oh. Hey. Go ahead, Pauline.
Too tall, Paul. Go ahead, Pauline, what?
The working relationship with the public school on the reservation.
Oh, that's why I said I want to... Oh, I think, you know, eventually it's going to get there because, you know, state is behind us now, and it's inevitable, but we're going to have to work. Right. We're going to have to work hard, and the teachers are going to have to work hard and probably overlook a lot of things that, but we're going to get there.
Good.
Well, and I'm just thinking that it's not even just the schools. We were talking today with the language program. It's our own people. That it just seems like there's like this internal kind of internalized oppression, you know, where we hurt each other. And so there's disagreements about the languages or how we're going to do it, or you're not doing it good enough, or that you're going, you know, that you're doing it all wrong, and you know, it's like how we end up hurting each other, or that you know, that our tribal councils aren't totally supportive. It's good to hear that the Kalispels are really supportive of the education, but it's just, you know, how do we? And I don't think it's, you know, I think just what I've heard from all the tribes, you know, that we need more support. We need to learn how to respect each other, and just, God, we have to get along, you know.
Okay,
The
well,
people themselves have to be, you know, of one heart.
Yes.
You know, it can't be fractionated. It can't be two parties.
Yes.
okay, well, I hate to close it up. This
Sorry?
was great. But I just want to say in closing that what has happened in the past, this is just a continuance of that. It's going to happen. It's going to grow. A lot of these things that we've dealt with, it's going to get better. And our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren continue on.
You are.
So with that, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here, and for our viewers, thank you very much for visiting us on Tribal Voices. And with that, we say good night.